Midway through my medical education, 2 years into it, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans.
Okay,
Yeah,
that was right then.
So at least in my cohort, most of us weren't there because the hurricane hit on the weekend. So we at that time had just started what we call clinical clerkships, which is it's changing a little bit over time, but it starts in your third year.
Yeah.
We had just finished a clerkship. It was on the weekend before we switched to a new one.
Okay.
So many of us had left town.
Wow.
Just
happened.
Just fortuitously, yeah. And and we didn't. In New Orleans at that time, hurricanes were a thing that happened, but
not like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they occasionally had some bad ones, but most of the time, the hurricane was a thing that would sort of blow over.
Right,
Nothing really major would happen.
Yeah.
So I think it's safe to say that at least from the perspective of those of us that hadn't lived there for a long, long time, we weren't too worried about it.
Right.
And to the point that even when the hurricane was hitting, I was in Texas at that point. I was trying to get back. I was, because they canceled the flights. I was like, okay, let me try to rent a car because I need to get back on Monday.
Yeah, right.
And be there.
No idea what's happening.
No idea, right? And then woke up to find, the whole city had flooded and all the tragedy that went on after that.
Yeah. Wow.
Essentially for a while, the school was completely shut down.
Yeah.
And what we learned at that point was that if there was a contingency plan, it was not followed.
Right.
But there appeared to have never been a contingency plan. And what was interesting about that was that when you moved to New Orleans, one of the very first things you learned, at least in the years that I moved there, was that if there ever is a really, really bad hurricane, this city is going to flood.
Like everybody just accepted
Everyone
that.
kind of knew that would happen, right? But what didn't seem to have happened was anyone actually planned for what if that actually happens. So for example, the report that we received, I never verified this independently, was that all of our email servers were in the basement of the medical school, right? Which flooded. So all of a sudden we had no email, we had no way to communicate with anybody, right? Wow. So the medical students set up basically a side chat.
2006?
This was 2005.
2005. Okay, yeah.
So there was no mechanism. So the med students set up this sidebar thing, and then that began a multi-week sort of saga where the medical school was just trying to sort of pick up just reorganize, kind of get things put back together. Obviously, people had lost home. I mean, there's just all this chaos and destructions happening. But from the medical student perspective, we were just sort of dangling out there with no real guidance. And so our experience was that the institution took care of the preclinical people faster. They took care of the undergraduates at the university faster. But the medical students, and I think to some degree the law students, if memory serves, were kind of left a little bit later, probably because it was harder to arrange. But we were just, and when I mean dangling, I mean we didn't have our financial aid at that point because we hadn't gotten the money had not been processed, right? So we were because
everything's just shut down.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So we were out of money. We often didn't have anywhere to live, depending on what the situation was.
I was going to say, did your home get?
Yeah. Well, my apartment was high. I was in an apartment building. I was high enough that it didn't get damaged directly, but I couldn't get to it. But not livable. I couldn't get. I'd have to sail to it, right?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, that was the actual reality. So all my things were there.
Yeah.
And so that was, so it just began this really high stress period.
What a way to start your dream. I mean, that's really interesting that was part of your piece. So
it wasn't just that. It was that it actually, over time, it became relatively adversarial. So the students felt abandoned. And I think, in retrospect, thinking back now, being older, I think to some degree we lacked a little bit of empathy in terms of thinking about, hey, these medical school deans, right? These are people.
All the pieces that they're trying to get back in line.
They have families and lives and things they're trying to do, right? But at that time, it just felt like, basically, we've been kind of hung out here. Y'all aren't helping us. You're not doing anything for us. You don't even have a plan for any of this.
Just stuck in limbo.
It's just absolute chaos.
Yeah.
So that, over time, the interaction, I think, just became increasingly angry and adversarial between the faculty and the students and the school and everything else like that. So in that context, several of us left. So that's actually what happened. We applied for transfer and ended up transferring out.